The average American with debt spends roughly 34.5% of their income just servicing that debt, not paying it off, just keeping it alive. That's not a budgeting problem. That's a business model. They told you the system was built to help you. Work hard, get an education, build credit, buy a house, save for retirement. Follow the rules and you'll be okay. But somewhere along the line, that promise broke. Because what we call the system, the economy, the banks, the credit industry, the student loan programs, the rent that never stops rising, the interest rates, the medical bills, wasn't actually built to help you climb. It was built to keep you climbing forever, to keep you running on a treadmill that moves just fast enough that you can never get off. Every paycheck, every bill, every payment plan, every monthly subscription is part of a machine that runs on one thing: your exhaustion, your constant effort, your predictable compliance. The more you work, the more they earn. The longer you stay in debt, the longer you stay dependent. The more you chase stability, the more predictable your payments become. The more predictable your payments, the more profitable you are. They built the system to keep you poor, and it's working exactly as designed. Before we go deeper, drop your state in the comments. Tell me how long you've been paying your student loans, or your credit card balance, or your rent that just keeps rising every single year. Because what you'll see in this video isn't about one bad decision you made. It's about a structure, an economic architecture that punishes almost everyone who plays by the rules. This is educational content, not financial or legal advice. Debt, bankruptcy, wage laws, and lending practices vary significantly by state. Always verify your rights before taking action. The illusion starts early. The story you were sold, the promise that shaped how you think about work, money, and success. The American dream. The idea that if you work hard enough, if you budget carefully enough, if you're responsible and disciplined, you'll win. You'll get ahead. You'll build wealth. You'll be secure. That's not just false hope. That's not just outdated advice from a different economy. That's marketing. That's a story sold to you by the same institutions that profit when you believe it and spend your life chasing it. Because here's what they don't tell you. The system doesn't reward productivity. It rewards predictability. It doesn't care how smart you are, how hard you work, how much you sacrifice, or how disciplined your budget is, as long as you keep feeding it. As long as you keep working, earning, spending, borrowing, and paying. That's the cycle. And it was engineered, not by accident, not by natural economic forces, but by deliberate policy and corporate strategy, to be permanent. You work, you earn, you spend, you borrow, you pay interest. You work more to cover the interest. You borrow more to cover the gap. You pay interest on the interest. The cycle tightens, and every year you feel like you're running harder just to stay in the same place. That's not personal failure. That's structural design. Credit is where most people first enter the system without realizing what they're entering. Credit was supposed to give you freedom, flexibility, the ability to buy now and pay later, to smooth out cash flow, to handle emergencies, to build a financial cushion. Instead, it became a leash, a system of control disguised as convenience. Your credit score isn't a measure of trustworthiness. It's not a reflection of your character or your responsibility. It's a measure of profitability. How much interest can they extract from you before you default? How long can they keep you paying without you breaking? The scoring models don't reward people who never use credit. They reward people who use credit consistently and pay it back slowly. Revolvers, not transactors. People who carry balances, who pay interest, who stay in the system for years. Miss one payment, even if you've been perfect for years, and your score drops 60, 80, 100 points. One mistake, and you're punished for years. The late payment stays on your report for 7 years. Your interest rates go up. Your insurance premiums go up in states that allow credit-based pricing. Your ability to rent an apartment gets harder. Some employers check credit for certain positions. One mistake, and the cost of living gets more expensive for 7 years. Sound familiar? But if you pay everything perfectly, if you never miss a payment, if you manage your credit exactly as they want you to, they reward you. With what? With more credit, a higher limit, a new card offer, a pre-approved loan, an invitation to borrow more. Not because you've proven you're financially stable, not because you don't need the credit, but because you've proven you'll keep playing the game. You'll keep borrowing. You'll keep paying interest. You'll keep generating revenue. Every swipe, every loan, every payment, data. Every data point feeds algorithms that predict your behavior, calculate your profitability, and determine how much they can extract from you before you break. The credit system was never about trust. It was about control, about creating a permanent class of people who need credit to survive and spend their lives paying for that need. Drop a comment if you've ever felt like your credit score controls your life more than you control it. Now here's where it gets darker. Student debt may be the most perfect example of how the system manufactures dependence and calls it opportunity. They tell you from the time you're 14, 15, 16 years old that education is the key to success, the path to a better life, the way to escape poverty or maintain middle-class status. And all of that can be true. Education has value. Knowledge has value. But what they don't tell you is that the price of that education has been deliberately inflated to create a debt trap that follows you for decades. College tuition has increased by over 200% since 1980. 1,200%. In the same period, wages for young workers have barely kept pace with inflation. The cost of education went up 12 times faster than the ability to pay for it. Why? Because colleges can charge whatever they want. Because banks will always lend whatever students will borrow. And because the government guarantees those loans, which means universities get paid up front, banks get interest for 10, 20, 30 years, and you get a lifetime of debt that can't be erased even in bankruptcy. That's not a broken system. That's a brilliant system. If you're the university administrator seeing your salary triple, if you're the bank collecting interest for decades, if you're the loan servicer getting paid to manage those accounts. For everyone else, for the 45 million Americans carrying $1.7 trillion in student debt, it's a trap that starts at 18 and never really ends. You graduate with $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 in debt. Your degree might help you get a job, but that job pays you just enough to cover rent, food, and the minimum payment on your loans, which barely touches the principal because most of it goes to interest. You pay for years. The balance barely moves. You defer during hard times, and interest capitalizes, gets added to your principal, so now you owe more than you borrowed. You pay $50,000 over 10 years on a $40,000 loan and still owe $35,000. That's not financial literacy failure. That's compound interest working exactly as designed. And you don't question it, because everyone around you is doing the same thing. Your friends, your classmates, your coworkers, everyone has student debt. Debt becomes normal. Stress becomes normal. Living paycheck to paycheck with a college degree becomes normal. And when everyone's struggling, no one realizes the problem isn't personal. It's structural. It's not that you're bad with money, it's that the system was designed to keep you paying forever. But the pattern doesn't stop there. Wages tell the same story from a different angle. If you've noticed that no matter how hard you work, no matter how many extra shifts you pick up, no matter how much you hustle, your paycheck feels smaller every year, like it doesn't go as far, like you're treading water instead of getting ahead. You're not imagining it. You're not bad at math. You're experiencing exactly what the data shows. For the last 50 years, worker productivity in America has gone up dramatically. We produce more value per hour of work than ever before in history. Technology, automation, efficiency. Workers are doing more, producing more, generating more profit for their employers than ever. Corporate profits exploded. Record highs year after year. CEO pay multiplied by hundreds. In 1965, the average CEO made about 20 times what the average worker made. Today, it's over 300 times. Some industries, it's over 1,000 times. But your wage? Flat. Adjusted for inflation, the average worker's wage has barely budged since the 1970s. Productivity went up. Profits went up. Executive compensation went up. Your paycheck stayed the same or went down in real terms. You're not paid according to how much value you create. You're not paid according to how hard you work or how productive you are. You're paid according to how little they can get away with paying you while keeping you just stable enough that you don't leave or organize or demand more. And when wages stagnate, while the cost of everything else, housing, healthcare, education, food, transportation, keeps rising, what do? What's the only option the system gives you? You borrow. You use credit to fill the gap your wages don't cover. Credit cards for groceries when you're short before payday. Car loans because you need transportation to get to work. Student loans because education is required for most decent jobs now. Medical debt because healthcare costs are insane and insurance doesn't cover everything. The debt fills the gap your paycheck doesn't. And once again, you're right back in the cycle. Working harder, earning the same or less in real terms, owing more, paying interest, staying stuck. That's not an accident. It's not a glitch. It's design. It's policy. It's decades of decisions made by people who benefit from you staying in debt. If you've ever worked full-time and still needed a credit card to make it to the end of the month, comment, yes, you're not alone. And every part of the system, credit, education, wages, housing, feeds the next. It's one machine, not four problems. The housing system runs on the exact same playbook, just with bigger numbers and longer timelines. They told you to buy a home. That's the advice you heard growing up. That's the path to wealth. That's how you build equity, invest in yourself, create generational wealth, achieve the American dream. But look at what's actually happened. Every decade for the last 40 years, housing prices have risen faster than wages. Much faster. A house that cost 3 times the median annual income in 1970 costs 7 or 8 times the median income now in many markets. In major cities, it's 10 or 15 times. Banks write the loans with terms that keep you paying for 30 years. Developers and investors buy up housing stock and inflate prices. Hedge funds and private equity firms buy tens of thousands of single-family homes that used to be starter houses for young families, turn them into rentals, and charge whatever the market will bear. And suddenly, home ownership isn't a stepping stone to stability. It's out of reach entirely for millions of people. Renting isn't a temporary phase while you save for a down payment. It's a lifetime subscription to someone else's mortgage. You don't build equity anymore. You build rent history. Every month, you pay someone else's mortgage, someone else's property taxes, someone else's maintenance costs, plus their profit margin on top. And every rent payment you make on time is proof the system is working perfectly. You stay just comfortable enough to keep paying, just stable enough that moving feels risky, just invested enough in your current situation, job, location, routine, that you can't easily leave, but never free enough to own, never secure enough to stop, never wealthy enough to escape the cycle. Ever wonder why it feels like you're always one paycheck behind? And when you can't afford to buy, when rent keeps rising, when wages don't keep up, they tell you it's because you're spending too much on coffee or avocado toast or streaming services. Personal responsibility. Budget better. Side hustle. As if the problem is your morning coffee and not the fact that the median home price in your city went up 40% in 5 years, while your wages went up 6%. Then there's the fine print. The legal language. The terms and conditions nobody reads, because they're written specifically to be incomprehensible to anyone without a law degree. Interest rates that adjust. Fees that compound. Penalties that trigger other penalties. Service charges. Processing fees. Convenience fees. Late fees. Overdraft fees. Insufficient funds fees. Account maintenance fees. Every financial product, every credit card, every loan, every special offer, every rewards program comes with a trapdoor hidden in legal language that's deliberately complex. Because confusion is profitable. Complexity keeps you compliant. If you don't fully understand how the interest is calculated, how the fees work, when the promotional rate expires, what triggers the penalty APR, you can't make fully informed decisions. You can't optimize. You can't fight back effectively. They don't want you to read the 47-page contract. They want you to sign it. They don't want you to calculate total cost over the life of the loan. They want you to focus on the monthly payment. They don't want you to compare options or understand alternatives. They want you to feel like you need it right now, and the terms don't really matter because you don't have another choice. They want you to think you're choosing when you're actually being managed. Guided. Funneled into products that maximize their profit and minimize your understanding. Here's the dark symmetry of the system, the part that makes it especially brutal for people at the bottom. The poorer you are, the more expensive it is to be alive. Low income? You qualify for higher interest rates on loans and credit cards. You pay more in fees. You pay more for car insurance in many states because your credit score factors into your premium. You can't afford to buy in bulk, so you pay more per unit. You can't afford to pay up front, so you use payment plans that charge interest. Bad credit because you had a medical emergency or lost a job through no fault of your own? Now you pay higher security deposits for apartments, utilities, phones. You pay higher interest on any credit you can get. You might not qualify for certain jobs. You get predatory loan offers instead of prime rates. No insurance or high deductible insurance because that's all you can afford. You pay more when something goes wrong. A $500 hospital visit becomes a $5,000 bill, becomes a collections account, becomes a credit score. Hit becomes years of financial consequences. Late on a bill because you had to choose between electricity and groceries? Late fee. Maybe another fee if the payment bounces. Maybe your service gets cut off and now there's a reconnection fee. Maybe it goes to collections. Every financial stress creates more financial stress. Everything costs more when you can afford it least. Banking fees are higher if you have a low balance. You can't access the best interest rates. You can't afford the upfront costs that save money long term. You pay more for transportation because you can't afford a reliable car. You pay more for food because you can't afford to shop at cheaper stores that are farther away. You pay more for everything because poverty itself is expensive. And that's the quiet miracle of modern capitalism, the thing that makes it so insidious. It extracts the most from the people with the least. It profits most from those who can afford it least. Not because anyone is intentionally evil or trying to hurt you personally, but because the system is designed to maximize profit. And the math says that the most profit comes from the most desperate people willing to pay the most to solve their immediate problems. Not because you're careless, not because you're irresponsible or stupid or bad with money, but because the system was built that way, to profit from struggle, to monetize scarcity, to turn survival itself into a subscription service you can never cancel. Debt isn't a side effect of poverty. Debt isn't something that happens to you because you made bad choices. Debt is the mechanism that creates modern poverty. It's the tool the system uses to keep people trapped. You start life already behind. Student loans if you want education. Medical debt if you or someone in your family gets sick. Rent that takes half your paycheck before you've bought food or paid for transportation. Then you use credit to keep up, to handle emergencies, to smooth out cash flow, to buy things you need but can't afford up front. And you pay interest on that credit. Interest on the money that filled the gap your wages couldn't cover. Interest on your survival. And when you fall behind, when the weight gets too heavy, when you miss a payment or have to choose between rent and your credit card bill, they say it's your fault. You should have saved more. You should have known better. You should have read the terms. You should have worked harder. You should have been more responsible. But you can't budget your way out of a system designed to keep you broke. You can't save your way out when you're not paid enough to have anything left after necessities. You can't work harder in an economy where productivity gains go to shareholders and executives, not workers. You can't know better in a system that deliberately obscures how it works and punishes you for asking questions. You can't be more responsible in an economy designed to make debt the only option for survival. The narrative of personal responsibility is the story they sell to keep you blaming yourself instead of seeing the structure. Because if you blame yourself, you don't organize, you don't demand change, you don't fight back, you just work harder, hustle more, sacrifice more, and sink deeper into the same system that's crushing you. The psychology is where the system hides its sharpest tools, and where most people don't even realize they're being manipulated. They don't just use numbers and contracts and interest rates. They use your mind, your emotions, your brain chemistry, your deepest fears and needs and desires. Advertising doesn't sell products. It sells emotion wrapped in products. It sells the feeling you think the product will give you. Fear of missing out, fear of being left behind, fear of not being enough, desire for belonging, desire for status, desire for security. Every ad you see, every email you get, every notification on your phone is engineered to trigger an emotional response that makes you want to act immediately without thinking long-term. And here's the brutal part. Financial stress shuts down your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning, rational decision-making, impulse control. When you're stressed about money, when you're anxious, when you're in survival mode, your brain literally can't process long-term consequences as effectively. You don't plan. You react. You handle the immediate crisis. You put out the fire in front of you without seeing that you're walking deeper into the building that's burning. And every swipe, every limited time offer, every pre-approved notification, every buy now, pay later button was designed specifically for that moment of vulnerability. For that moment when your rational brain is offline and your emotional brain is screaming for relief. You think you're making a choice. You're not. You're reacting to design, to stimuli engineered by behavioral psychologists and data scientists who understand your triggers better than you understand them yourself. Every app, every website, every advertisement, every algorithm is built to pull you back into spending, because every dollar you keep is a dollar they lose. Your savings is their lost profit. Your financial stability is their reduced revenue stream. So they keep you destabilized, keep you stressed, keep you wanting, keep you feeling like you're behind and need to buy your way forward. And they make it so easy. One click, tap your phone, enter your password, approve with your face. Zero friction between impulse and transaction. Comment if you've ever bought something you didn't need because the ad caught you at exactly the wrong moment. Tired, stressed, lonely, scared. So what can you actually do? How do you fight a system that profits from your exhaustion? How do you escape a cycle that's been engineered over decades to be inescapable? The answer isn't perfection. It's not a 10-step plan to financial freedom, or a budget template, or a side hustle. Those things might help on the margins, but they don't change the structure. The answer is awareness, consciousness, seeing the system clearly for what it is. Because the moment you see how the gears turn, the moment you understand that your financial stress isn't personal failure but structural design, the illusion breaks, the shame lifts, the self-blame stops. And you can start making decisions based on reality instead of the story they sold you. You stop blaming yourself for struggling in a system designed to make you struggle. You stop thinking your inability to save is a moral failing when wages haven't kept pace with costs for 50 years. You stop feeling ashamed for carrying debt when the entire economy runs on manufacturing debt and making it impossible to avoid. You start asking different questions, better questions, questions that actually matter. Who profits from this product I'm being sold? Who benefits if I stay scared? Who gets paid when I fail? Who wrote these rules, and who do they serve? You start treating your attention like money, because it is money. Your attention is being bought and sold. Your data is being traded. Your behavior is being predicted and manipulated. Every time you give your attention to an ad, to a notification, to a special offer, someone is profiting from that moment. You start seeing every advertisement, every email, every pre-approved offer, every limited time deal for what it really is. A trigger engineered to keep you compliant, to keep you consuming, to keep you in the cycle. You start making different choices, not perfect choices, not choices that fix everything overnight, but choices based on understanding rather than fear. You stop taking on new debt unless you absolutely have to. You focus on paying down existing debt strategically, highest interest first, or smallest balance first for psychological wins, whichever works for your situation. You cut out subscriptions you don't use. You unsubscribe from marketing emails that trigger spending. You delete shopping apps from your phone. You create friction between impulse and action, make it slightly harder to spend, slightly easier to pause and think. You build an emergency buffer however you can. $100, $250, $500, because that buffer is what breaks the cycle of one crisis creating the next. You learn your rights. You understand what debt collectors can and cannot do. You know your state's statute of limitations. You learn when to negotiate, when to dispute, when to simply say no. You stop trying to optimize within the system and start trying to exit the parts of the system that are actively harming you. And maybe most importantly, you stop playing the game alone. You talk about it. You share what you've learned. You tell the truth about your situation instead of pretending everything's fine. Because the system depends on isolation. It depends on shame. It depends on everyone thinking they're the only one struggling, the only one who can't make it work, the only one who's failing. But you're not. Millions of people are carrying debt they can't pay off. Millions are working full-time and still struggling. Millions are doing everything right and still falling behind. That's not individual failure. That's collective design. That's a system working exactly as it was built to work. And the more people understand that, the less power the system has. The more you see the machine clearly, the harder it becomes for the machine to run on your silence, your shame, your exhaustion. They built the system to keep you poor, to keep you working, to keep you paying, to keep you predictable and profitable, and too tired to fight back. And it's working, for now. But the moment you see it, really see it, clearly and completely, something shifts. You stop accepting it as natural or inevitable. You stop blaming yourself. You stop sacrificing your health, your relationships, your peace, your life to keep feeding a machine that was never designed to set you free. You start asking what you actually need versus what you've been told you need. You start building something different. You start choosing differently. Not perfectly, not all at once, but deliberately, consciously, with your eyes open. Drop your state and your biggest debt struggle in the comments. Credit cards that never seem to go down? Student loans you've been paying for years? Rent that eats half your paycheck? Medical bills you didn't choose to have? How long have you been stuck in the cycle, and what did you realize too late? Because every comment you leave is a map. Proof that this isn't individual failure, it's collective experience. It's structural reality. The more people see that, understand that, talk about that openly without shame, the less power the system has to keep running on our silence. Share this with someone who's drowning, someone who thinks they're failing when they're actually fighting a system that was designed to beat them. Someone who needs to hear that they're not broken, they're not stupid, they're not irresponsible, they're just living in an economy that profits from their struggle. You don't owe them your peace. You don't owe them your sleep. You don't owe them your sanity. You don't owe them your life. They built the system to keep you poor, but you don't have to stay that way. Because now you see it. Now you understand how it works. Now you know who benefits, and how they benefit, and why they need you to keep playing. And once you see the machine clearly, you can stop feeding it. You can make different choices. You can build something different for yourself and the people around you. They designed the system. But you get to decide how much longer you're willing to run on their treadmill. The cycle breaks the moment you see it clearly. Now you do.